Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is Ship Updates. Now, of course, this week was mostly focused on not so much individual ship updates, but it was more in a broader sense the Item 2.0 system and the interactions between players and ships. And we'll get to that in a second, but there were a couple of little snippets of updates on ships. Now, first off came from Twitter, Sandy Gardner showing, once again, the progression and the work on the Terrapin, bringing this ship into the game, though, it doesn't look like it's going to make 3.0, but somewhere, at least in the next 5 to 6 months, it is reasonable to assume that we might see this ship flyable in-game at that time. And of course, hopefully, after the release of 3.0, you'll have plenty to explore and to scan and check out with this ship once it comes out. Now, next up, of course, was the Drake Cutlass Black. As we saw in ATV, Josh Coons was working on the LODs for this ship. Now, this ship should be included in 3.0, but not only that, the completion of this vessel also kind of heralds the beginning of the Drake Cutlass Red and the Drake Cutlass Blue, which are, of course, the ambulance version of the Cutlass and the police version of the Cutlass. So overall, the Cutlass family, hopefully very, very soon, being completed and in game. Now, interestingly enough, there was almost seemingly an update that was released, but more or less accidental. During ATV, they were talking about Nav Beacons, which are, of course, a beacon that you can drop from your ship. It can, and it marks a location that you can travel to, or something that can be sold, hacked, destroyed, manipulated in many ways. And of course, that's, a very interesting thing once we get a little more information on it. But during the video detailing it, there almost seemed to be an accidental information release right here. Now, this is thanks to Reddit user Royalkin, who actually posted this and found this. I didn't see this myself, but personally, I think you should change your screen name to Eagle Eye after this. But it noted that Nav Beacons should be dropped the same way mines are dropped from ships. Now, at face value, you might think that, okay, this is just something, they're just simply describing a physical function of dropping the beacon at a certain location. But at one point, I believe during the 2014 ship voting campaign, when we were actually voting on what ships to be concepted next, a mine layer was part of that. So it is entirely possible, though I don't think it's that likely. It is possible that we could see a mine layer in the future. Though it should be noted that mine laying might not require a dedicated vessel, and if this actually does become a thing, it could be any number of ships that could serve as a mine layer, or it could be a simple module that you would attach to a larger ship, or maybe even just something that you could hang under the wing of a fighter and drop at a certain location. So, interesting question to be asked in the future, but right now, that's more or less some very distant speculation. For the most part this week, though, a lot of the updates were more or less broader updates affecting all ships within the game, which is, of course, not only the Item 2.0 system, but the ship interaction system, which allows you to interact with various controls within your ship. And initially, I was kind of enthusiastic about this system, but then, anything that improves upon the system that we currently have for interacting with various parts of your ship, I'm all for. But then I started to ask a deeper question in regards to these kind of systems and the way that we're kind of integrating with and controlling our ships in game. Now, a lot of this appears to be kind of part of a broader campaign to kind of bring us more into our cockpits, moving our displays down onto the MFDs, and now allowing almost, though not really, a tactile control over certain switches and buttons within the cockpit. But I almost like this, and this is the kind of the part where I'm conflicted, and it's not so much I'm conflicted with the direction of game development, but it's more of like an internal conflict within my mind as I kind of look at this system, and I'm not sure what to think of it. Because on the one hand, it seems very cool and very immersive, but at the same time, in a logical sense, it almost seems like a step in the wrong direction. Now, in the older system, which you're seeing in a screenshot up on the screen here, you know, all this information was placed up in our helmets and it was projected within our helmets. And, you know, these menus could be manipulated. You could go through to the ship power systems, the weapon layouts and configurations, and manipulate all of that through the HUD within your own helmet. And it didn't involve you actually going down and messing with all the MFDs and switches within the cockpit. And to me, that seemed like a much more logical system, you know, moving into the future. Now, some people might say that that feels a little too sci-fi and perhaps a little too Iron Man. But strangely enough, as much as this idea might seem like just some distant piece of sci-fi, this is technically has already existed in Star Citizen and does exist to a certain extent in Star Citizen. You already have voice command software that allows you to simply, you know, speak a command and get the computer to do something, to, you know, manipulate the various controls, power levels, shield orientation, whatnot of your ship in game. Now, if you're wondering, you know, is this a legitimate expectation, you know, is this something that they would have in the future? Yes, of course it is. I mean, realistically, if you're watching this video on your TV, or if you're watching it, you know, without headphones on, I could right now utter a command that could activate your tablet or, you know, your iPhone or whatever, just by simply saying, you know, and perhaps a name that starts with S, or just saying, you know, Google, and then issuing a command. I could get your tablet to look at my, you know, YouTube channel or something like that. If, you know, I'm not going to do that, but, you know, this has actually already been done as a tool in advertising. It's something that a lot of people have asked questions about, but technically this is something that already exists. And as for the helmet integration, well, technically that already exists as well. If you look at the helmet for the F-35 fighter and its ability to overlay, you know, sensor information that may not, you know, things that may not be visible to the naked eye, it can then take whatever the pilot's looking at and overlay certain information over that, not just ships, you know, fighter status, fuel status, or things like that, but it can also reveal targets that the naked eye might not be able to discern on the ground or in the air, and thereby enhancing the pilot's situational awareness. And so, to a certain extent, in this instance, I kind of feel like Star Citizen kind of went in the wrong direction by, you know, moving the information down into the MFDs. And I always felt like, no, it should be up in the heads-up display, and if you don't want to see that stuff, you should be able to simply issue a command like dismiss, you know, dismiss helmet overlay, and then you would simply have like a normal natural image of the space around you. But at the same time, it could allow you to interact with your ship in a much more efficient and direct way. But the actual integration of all the switches and dials in each individual cockpit, I don't know, there's a part of me that likes that for the immersion factor, but then there's also another part of me that's kind of saying, well, why don't we just simply integrate voice command software and just create a universal set of commands so that we don't have to, you know, manually design the interaction points in all these different ship cockpits? I mean, would that not maybe save us some time in the long run? And maybe that's something that can be done down the road, you know? So I don't know. I'm very conflicted on this. I mean, you know, personally conflicted because, Usually, you know, I can sit there and I can say, oh, I don't like this or I do like that, you know, sort of like the MFDs and the HUD display thing. You know, I don't like the fact that things were moved down into the MFDs, but as for the actual nitty gritty of being able to touch, you know, touch, air quotes, the controls within your cockpit, I don't know. Like, I feel a little, you know, I really can't seem to decide which way I feel that it should be. So, I don't know. I guess that's just, you know, just a personal conflict that I have yet to resolve. But overall, it definitely looks good for an immersion factor and for kind of bringing you into that universe. And you know, I think that and especially a VR helmet, who knows, you might sit down at your computer just to say, oh, I'm just going to play Star Citizen for an hour, and then realize, oh my god, where did the whole day go? Anyways, that has been the show for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Quantum travel initiated.